Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're looking at something a little bit more modern, especially for me. I seem to be living in the 50s in a lot of these films. But this was a camera that was introduced in the late 80s, 1989 to be precise, and was produced in quite small and limited numbers between 1989 and 1992. This is the Canon EOS RT. Give you a better look at it there, the focus is working yet. So EOS RT, RT stands for real time. A very similar camera body, and it is shared with the EOS 600 and the EOS 630 series. It has a lot of their features and functionality, but it has some quite interesting features, and it was a very expensive camera when it was new. It was a top of the line camera actually. It was sort of second to the EOS 1. Right, the real difference with this camera is it has what's called a pellicle mirror. Canon have made quite a few pellicle mirrored cameras, and this is the first autofocus pellicle mirrored camera. The previous ones were manual focus, and they were designed really for high speed, very high frame rates, for sports and action and wildlife and that kind of thing. There's a reason why wedding photographers for decades use twin lens reflex cameras, not only because of the large format, but also because of having the viewing lens and the taking lens separate. You could see your subject. So if somebody blinked or coughed or moved or did something stupid while you were taking the picture, you could see it and you'd know to take another one. Today, of course, with digital, you can look at the screen and see straight away. But in the film days, you wouldn't really know. It's a common argument placed for rangefinders is that you can see your subject while you're taking the picture. With a rangefinder, you can also normally see outside of the image area, so you can see what's coming into your shot or leaving your shot, etc. So this is a sort of an effort as well to bring that functionality to SLRs. If I take the front cap off, there you can see the mirror, and it is a mirror that doesn't move. This mirror just sits there. It passes 2/3 of the light through to the back of the camera, and it reflects 1/3 of the light up in the normal sort of SLR fashion. So it's very similar to an SLR. It is an SLR really, but it doesn't have a moving mirror. The mirror is completely stationary. Big advantage of that, of course, is there's no mirror slap. So in areas where that has an effect, like long exposures or not mega long exposures, but slow shutter speeds, things like macro, astrophotography, etc., it has quite a number of uses. The one issue with these mirrors is they are quite sensitive to cracking and breaking caused by the movements in the camera, particularly when they're running at a fast speed. This is capable of 5 frames a second. In the F3 video you saw the size of the motor drive and everything. This has done away with that. It's quite light and quite a nice simple camera to hold. Not the most attractive camera to look at, but interesting nonetheless. It has quite specific uses. It enables you to keep your eye on the subject while you actually take the picture. It's also an awful lot quieter because it doesn't have that mirror moving about. So let's give you an overview of the camera. Obviously starting at the front first. We have the now standard wheel on the front. We have a shutter button. It's electromagnetic, it's not mechanical. This is an electronic camera, needs batteries to run. The batteries actually go in the grip on this side. You unscrew this and the grip comes out, which we'll do in a minute. It's an EF mount, so any EF lens or accessory will work with it. EFS, no. Possibly some of the EFS lenses from Sigma and Tamron, they may work because they only ever have the EF mount. The EFS mount isn't used by anybody else apart from Canon. The usual lens release button. 2 buttons on the side here. The top one is a depth of field preview, which is electronic. So you push that to see your depth of field, And this button down here is if you're in manual mode, you can push this button and this dial becomes the aperture selector. It only has the one command dial, there isn't a command dial, oops, on the back. So that's the function of these buttons down here. Lug straps either side. Bottom pretty boring, has a tripod mount right in the middle of the lens. This is how you open the back. Push button and slide, so quite secure. This is the back of the camera. So we've got this film back here. It is interchangeable. There is a data back as well for these. I don't think there was a bulk back or anything. That was unique to the F1. It's got the little window so you can see if there's any film loaded and also what the setting of it is. Under here we have a little flap held on by a little magnet down here. This has a number of functions hidden away. We have the film rewind function, AF select, so we can have single or continuous or servo AI they call it, which has a bit of a tracking feature as well. We also have a battery check button, and I think this one is for the self timer if I remember right. Pushing them together you can do sort of yellow and blue, which is to set the ISO manually. The camera does read DX, you'll see that in a minute when we open the back up. And put these two together is custom function, which is a feature we see on a lot of cameras, and we also have auto exposure bracketing as well. So that's what's hidden under that little flap there. If we open the back up, put the button in, open the back up, you can see the film back. So here we have the pressure plate. This is the area spring that holds the film cartridge in. Pressure plate. This one's quite sophisticated, it has some rollers here as well to keep the film moving smoothly. These are the connections for the data back. It has the quick load system, so you only have to pull the film across. The camera will do the rest. Vertical travelling metal shutter, so 125th second sync speed. DX tabs for reading the DX from here. It rewinds as well as advances the film. And as with all Canon stuff, it has a production code. This is FE, so F is for Fukushima, E is the year, D is 89, and this is obviously 1990 because it's on an E, and the 03 is the month, so this is going to be March of 1990 was when this camera was made in Fukushima in Japan. Very useful things to know. On the top here we have the on-off power switch, so L is locked at the moment. We can turn it this way for automatic with a beep. This turns the beep off. And if we go the other way, we have the RT setting, which we'll discuss in a moment. RT, real time. On this side we have these sort of two push buttons on here, which is again something that's carried on with Canon cameras. This one illuminates the LCD. I don't think you can really see that. I can't remember if this has got batteries in it or not. I think it has, yeah. And this one enables partial metering, they call it, which is basically spot metering in the centre. There's only one AF point right in the middle of the screen. Focus lock's achieved by pressing down on the shutter button halfway. On the top we have an LCD. This tells us what's going on with the camera. Command dial, shutter release, thingy for your strap. Hot shoe, this is the usual Canon dedicated hot shoe for electronic flash. And on this side we have three buttons, so we have the mode, and we'll scroll through those in a moment. Exposure compensation and multiple exposure. You can do multiple exposures up to 9 per frame, I think, on this one. So let's turn her on. It's automatic. Let's get you in a better position where you can actually see what's shown on the screen. That's a bit better. Right, so you can see on this at the moment it's in manual, so I can set the shutter speed using this dial. So you also have half steps on this as well, so rather than like the old mechanical cameras you have half stops. It goes all the way up to a 2,000th of a second, right the way down to 30 seconds I think is the longest this goes to. This is in seconds. And bulb. Yeah, so bulb 30 seconds through to 2000. So you can set your shutter speed that you want there. And when you push that M button in, like I was explaining earlier, that will allow you to select the aperture. So that's the manual mode. This is showing the drive mode, which is set for, sorry, the light's reflecting, single shot and manual focus. That's all it's showing us at the moment on there. If I press mode again, use the button, that's program mode. So that will just give us two figures, 90th at 1.4. The ISO that this is set to, we can check by pushing in these. So that's going to be that one and that one. That's ISO 400, and you can change that by moving that dial. It's up to 800 now. So mode wise, we're in program mode. Press it again and we have TV time value, which is shutter priority, that's what I tend to call it. So you set the shutter speed, the camera will select the aperture and flash if it's not in range. There you go. Very simple, very intuitive to use. Aperture value, you don't need to push the button in that one, you can just use this because it's changing the aperture value. You'll see the shutter speed change with it. And then we also have this depth. Quite an interesting feature this on the old Canon cameras. You can point it at two areas, one close to you and one further away from you, and the camera will calculate the required aperture to keep everything sharp. So that's your mode button. I like aperture priority, so I stick it in that. Exposure compensation, very simple. It's 5 stops on this one, it's quite generous. Plus or minus 5 stops. Oop, there we go. Press the two together, you can have multiple exposures. So that's that one and that one. You can dial in how many you want. I think it was 9 was the limit, wasn't it? Yeah, 9. ME showing the multiple exposures on there. Right, a sticker lens on it. A film plane indicator, I quite often forget those, are useful for macro though. So I turn that off. This camera, interestingly, does support IS. And it supports all the EF lenses. So here I've got some samples. This is a 50mm lens, but this is the latest STM version. That works fine on there, no problem at all. This is my favourite lens to use on it, which is the little 40mm 2.8 pancake lens, and that works on there just fine, no problems at all. Great advantage of the EF system. This is the original lens that probably would have been used with it, which is the metal mount Mark 1 50mm 1.8. And then I also have, we talk about using old lenses on new cameras. What about using new lenses on old cameras? This is a 16 to 35 f4L, a lens that didn't exist in the film days, and this is image stabilised. So as I said, image stabilisation is supported on this camera, so you could use this lens on this body. So let's red dot on the lens, red dot on the camera, line it up, twist it clockwise. And there we go, the lens is a lot heavier than the camera is, and that will work just fine, although it's an f4 lens. So I'll turn it on. So in aperture mode, that's set to 5.6. I can choose any aperture that I want, but obviously f4 is the highest one. And then you can see the autofocus. I'm trying to do autofocus on something that's very near, so you probably won't do that. But yeah, I can select the aperture on here, so say I want to shoot at f11. F19, and it shows you the exposure on the top, so it's really very good. Like I say, IS is supported, so long telephoto lenses are really good with this as well, though I haven't got an IS long lens. I use a magic drain pipe, that's my long lens, the 80-200 2.8. So there's an overview of the camera. Let's stick a more normal lens on it, because That is heavy lens, that one. It's a very nice lens, but that lens was never designed or thought about for film cameras. It didn't exist in those days. You know, in the 70s, if you could have got a lens like this, it would have been remarkable. So you can use new lenses on there. I have to say this 40mm, that was never around in the film days. So it's kind of the opposite of what people do nowadays. It's using new lenses on film cameras. That sits on there quite nicely, makes a nice little combination set. Probably ideal for things like street and that, although you have to put it up to your eye. But yeah, you can see when someone's coming to hit you. So yeah, it's quite useful. Right, let's put some film in it. It does come, or it did come, with an additional book. So you got the normal 630 book, which covered the special functions, in particular numbers 1 to 7. This camera has extra special functions. If I can find them, yeah, there they are. So as it says, the first 7 are the same as in the 630 and the 600 series. The one I like is the special function 2, where you can leave the leader of the film out. Because I process my own films, it's really irritating when the cameras wind the film right back into the canister. So these are the extra ones: 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and one that cancels. So let's talk about shutter lag. When you press the shutter button on most cameras, there's a shutter lag of about 100 milliseconds. So that's about a tenth of a second. The Canon F1, which is a highly professional camera from the Canon range, had a shutter lag time of 40 milliseconds. This one runs at the 100 milliseconds normally, but you can program it to run at 40 milliseconds. But the real-time functionality of the camera means that you can drop the shutter lag time down to 8 milliseconds. That's what the RT means. It literally takes a picture as soon as you press the button. I've got a roll of film here, so you just pop it in, pull it over to the orange mark. Probably gone a bit too far there, but no harm done. Close the back, and there it is, loaded and ready to go. It's a professional camera, it doesn't mess about. So one single, you've got single and continuous. I say continuous does depend on shutter speed, but you can get 5 frames a second out of it, and that's how you load it with film. If you want to see if the ISO functionality is working, we can push the yellow and the blue together, and you can see it set the ISO for 400. So there it is, ready to go. I don't know if you can see much through the viewfinder of this. The autofocus point is, and it's just taking a picture. And another one. It's incredibly quiet. All you really see in there is the bit in the middle of the viewfinder. I think it does display, yeah, aperture and shutter speed are displayed at the bottom. I don't think this is going to focus on that. You can just about see it in there. You've got shutter speed and aperture displayed on the bottom. But yeah, very nice camera to use. As I said, this is a test film, so this is the shutter firing. Once it's got focus, that is the shutter sound. So it is quiet, and even quieter than some rangefinder cameras. Very useful, very nice. Not particularly desirable, these are not particularly expensive second hand. A little bit strange. If you're going to buy one, just make sure that the mirror isn't cracked and damaged. You can't clean the mirror yourself. Really, you can only use a blow thing on it, or a very light brushing that Canon recommend, not using any sort of fluids or anything on it. And yeah, just taking care of it. But yeah, very nice camera. So in the RT mode, takes a picture straight away, and then you've got the normal, not RT mode. The other thing with it is that when you, this isn't set up right, you can set it up so that when you push the button it takes a picture. When you release the shutter button it then winds on, etc. But yeah, it's a very nice camera to use. Quite an interesting one if you're an EOS collector. It's one to add. Like I say, the very first autofocus pellicle mirrored camera. See there, it's taken a picture. Yeah, very, very quiet. Everything is winding on. I've got the multiple exposure bit set up wrong. There's one. Well, I guess that's right. It's not showing ME in there, but there we go. So there we are, folks. That's the camera for today. The Canon EOS RT. Not sure if I can recommend it. It's an interesting one to have if you can find one cheap enough that's in working condition without a broken pellicle mirror in it. Then yeah, it might be worth adding to your collection. I like it for its discreetness. It's very quiet, and like I say, it enables you to keep your eye on what you're photographing. So quite useful for people. Very useful for macro. I quite often use this with my my automatic bellows because it just reduces any vibration, etc. But yep, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it interesting. Questions, comments, queries, etc. down below. Like, subscribe and all that usual stuff. Seem to be getting subscribers thick and fast now, so yeah, happy days. And look forward to seeing you in the next one. Okay, we're going to show you how the battery works in this camera. You know me and batteries, hopefully this one will go a bit better than normal. So you unscrew this on the side. These batteries at this period are all quite sort of common between these different cameras, so they are quite interchangeable. And they are what they call 2CR5s, is it? Quite an expensive battery if you're not careful. The battery can cost you more than the camera did on some models. So this part comes off, and then down here you'll see this orange tab. Just push that tab out to the side. Ugh. You know me and batteries. There it is. So this is the battery for it. This is a proper Energizer lithium one. It's an expensive battery. My EOS 3 I think takes these as well, so I have a couple of rechargeable ones of these as well. Yeah, these are rechargeable, so you can just are these are rechargeables or the other ones are rechargeable? Lithium photo. I don't know, I think that's the rechargeable one. I think this is a proper use once and throw away lithium. So yeah, I don't think this is the rechargeable, the other one is. But yeah, with the batteries, these ones are quite expensive. If you've got one of these or several of these sort of cameras, you're better off buying these rechargeable ones that you can just recharge them when they're flat. It's good to have spare batteries. And then to put a battery back into it, it will only go in, whoops, it will only go in one way. There's a shape for it, and that little tab locks it in. And then you can attach the grip. The grip goes back on, and then you can tighten that up, dropping it on the floor. And in my videos there's usually something that ends up on the floor. Tighten that up. Then we do have a battery check function, so we can turn that on. If we drop down the little flap at the back, you can see that battery check is the one on the end. We've got 3 bars battery check, so that's fine. Turn it off. That's how you change, and that's where the battery is on these.